I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll talk about the Steelers' win over the Las Vegas Raiders and how Kenny Pickett stepped up and what it might mean for the future of this offense and this team. That and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, Steelers fans, it's a Victory Monday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, and there's a lot of good things to talk about. Some bad, we'll get to both, but I think we got to start off with the most obvious thing. The offense put up points, and Kenny Pickett, with his first game, he's thrown 2 touchdown passes. Technically, he did score 2 touchdown passes in his first game against the Jets when he ran them in, but you could see the progress in this game. And I want to address that leading off the show because this isn't every part of the Kenny Pickett we saw in the preseason and training camp. We still need to see more fluidity, I think, in the offense, but this was a step in the right direction. It's the second week in a row that he's taken a step in the right direction. So let's break it down for Kenny Pickett. 16 of 28, 235 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and a pass rating of 108.5, his best ever in a game. And he did look shaky to start. Almost threw a pick 6 to Marcus Peters right away. That was alarming. But you could see throughout the game that he started to settle in, and we started to see the things that we've seen him do that we really liked before the season. Using his eyes, keeping his head up, looking downfield. And it all started with the Calvin Austin touchdown on the second drive that they had. If you go back and you look at that play, there was a beautiful all-22 view that was shown from behind the quarterback's angle, so you can kind of see where he was looking. And you can see on the play, the Raiders came out with a single high safety look. So it looks like, okay, this might be man across the board, but that safety might be running with Calvin Austin's post route. So that could be a little tough. But Kenny Pickett, looking at that safety, he sees that the safety was specifically following George Pickens on the left side. So they were doubling George Pickens. So Kenny Pickett just kind of looks him off to the left, makes him think he's still going to Pickens. Then as soon as he sees that safety move, he uncorks a beautifully thrown deep ball. Calvin Austin runs under it. It's an easy 72-yard touchdown. A huge play for the Steelers as they struck right back after Devontae Adams' touchdown. We'll get to the defense later in the show, but that was exactly what you've been looking for from Kenny Pickett, the ability to look off defenders, make reads, and make plays. And that was just a really good sign of progress. Honestly, that was a shot that I talked about on this show that was designed up for Kenny Pickett in week 1 against the Niners that he wasn't taking. And it was there. It wasn't even Calvin Austin all the time. It was just different guys. And he wasn't taking the shot. This time, not only did he take the shot, he hit it. And that's really good signs from him. Also, throughout the game, we saw him using his legs. We saw him processing downfield, making smart decisions, even a smart decision that's as inconsequential as throwing the ball away. He avoided the mistakes. And you look back at this game, when I look at how this game played out, yes, the Raiders did outgain the Steelers in total yards and everything, but the Steelers didn't turn the ball over. And the ultimate difference in this game, in my opinion, was that Kenny Pickett put touchdowns on the board without turning the ball over. Jimmy Garoppolo put touchdowns on the board through 3 interceptions. And Kenny Pickett, he's the second-year player. Jimmy Garoppolo is the veteran. He's not supposed to be. He is the veteran who's been able to in his career kind of protect the football and let his team win around him. Kenny Pickett did a better job of that in this game. And granted, one was facing a little bit more aggressive of a defense, but you take what you get and you don't apologize for finding a way to get a win. But again, for me, for Kenny Pickett, the progress that we saw in this game was that he was processing downfield. There were times, even when there was pressure in his face, you could see him kind of reading and understanding where his guys were a little bit better, where his eyes were looking. You could see him processing, okay, this is there, this isn't there, and making more consistent throws. And we'll get into some more of those throws in a bit here, because I think that the one touchdown drive that they had that was an actual drive, 6 plays, 81 yards. I want to go into that because there was a lot of potential there. And I got to say, Matt Canada in this game called plays that put Kenny Pickett in position for the most part to make these reads. And this is the start of what I was talking about when I said from the get-go, from the last 2 weeks and even all the last season, this offense is not going to go anywhere if they don't have base plays that they can find success on. And they just haven't had it. And in this game, there were some basic plays, fundamental things. The Steelers were doing well on offense, making the right reads, getting open, running the ball at certain spots, and that can now build up some confidence with some base plays that they have, some foundational plays to say, okay, these are things we know we do well. Now let's expand them to other things, and then you could start to add the complications and the things that might trick defenses into trying to take away the wrong things and opening up bigger opportunities. But all that to say, this was part of the progress that was absolutely needed in this game. This wasn't a pretty win by any means. The Steelers could have put these Raiders away much earlier than they did, and that would have made it probably an easier going game. But this is an offense now that we've seen there is potential there. There's big play potential, there's drive potential, and there's rhythm to be had there, and Kenny Pickett can make the necessary plays. I think that's a good sign, and that was something that we said we needed to see from the Steelers going into this game and coming out of this game, because if they can show that sign, then they can keep taking steps forward instead of taking steps backward. I think it's a really good sign for that. I want to talk more about this offense and what we saw in that touchdown drive, how things played out, the balancing of the offense, and what the biggest problem that I see right now that's still very evident that is holding this offense back that I think can be there. We'll also talk about the defense and what we saw from them. A lot more here to break down on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. So stick with me moving forward. We still got a lot to discuss. But first, we want to remind you this show is sponsored by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders, and that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in to make it easier for you to find people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach out to your network and beyond, to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire faster. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our talk about the Steelers' 23-18 win over the Las Vegas Raiders and what it sets up. Now, let's get into that 6-play, 81-yard drive that the Steelers had in the third quarter, because I actually think that was a really impressive part of this game. And if you go back and you look at how this game played out and what the offense did from the middle part of the first quarter to the end of the third quarter, the Steelers had, what was it? Looking at these numbers to be correct here. So they had total 7 official drives. One of those drives was just simply them getting out of the first half. So 6 real drives they had there. 5 of 6 drives in the middle of that game the Steelers put points in the board. And that's real progress right there. Two of those, bookending them with touchdowns on the bomb to Calvin Johnson and the six play 81-yard drive in between. And you had three field goals also in there, in that mix there. You only punted one time. And even on that one punt, you at least got a first down once so that you weren't putting your defense right back out there right away. So a few good things there. But again, let's go back and let's look at that touchdown drive that they had in the third quarter, because to me, that was exactly what we've been looking for from the Steelers offense, hitting you in different ways, forcing you to honor different things, and that makes it so tough to defend what this offense has in playmakers. Starts off with a quick pass to George Pickens, mesh route, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, gets 17 yards, and it's plays like that that have been schemed up, and Kenny Pickett hasn't taken consistently a lot this year, that when they're taken, it forces the defense to have to honor different things, and it means they can't just sit on the run the way they have in a lot of games. Jaylen Warren right after that gets a 4-yard run, nice and solid, sets up 2nd and 6, and then you get Jaylen Warren open in the passing game, a good little screen actually executed. We haven't seen the Steelers execute a screen pass successfully. It feels like in a decade. It's not that long. It's that being dramatic there, but you get my point. It's been a while. That gets 16 yards for Jaylen Warren. Then they hit Pat Freiermuth over the middle, 14 yards, and you're moving. You got a good pace. Then another run for Najee Harris, this one going 17 yards off to the left, makes a really good play there. And then Kenny Pickett hits the play action, bootleg, wide open Pat Freiermuth, touchdown. So just really good sequencing there, good calls for Matt Canada, and balance we saw in the offense. And if you look back at the Raiders, they couldn't fixate on one thing, and that's where I think the potential of this offense exists. If the offensive line can just not get abused, if the passing game can show, hey, if you leave this guy open over here, we're gonna hurt you for it. The way they did with the screen, the way they did with the short pass to Pickens, those type of things. Eventually, they're going to have to start looking to defend those, and it's going to stop them from focusing so hard on the run game and also open up potential bigger plays in the deep passing game. So that drive, I think, meant a lot for the Steelers as far as them believing in themselves, but also putting it on tape that, like, hey, you better cover these things or it's going to start to get a lot worse for your team. So really good sequence there for the Steelers, and I thought that gave them something to build on. And I think that's the bottom line for this offense. This game was something to build on. You can go back and you can look at this and say, hey, sure, this wasn't clean. Sure, you could have done a lot better. Sure, the offensive line could have blocked better. They could have opened up more holes. The run game could have actually been established and carried this game out. They could have won this game without the defense having to take it back on. But this is kind of what you need to see from week 3, at least. You needed to see progress. You need to see Kenny Pickett processing the field. You need to see some playmaking and spreading the ball around. I thought that was another really cool factor of this game as well. You look at it, Pickens was targeted 6 times. Austin was targeted 6 times. Freiermuth 4 times. Robinson 4 times. Warren 4 times. You got 5 different options there that were at least targeted 4 times in this game. A really good balance so that a team can't just go and say, okay, we're taking away this one option and then he's done. That's part of it, I think, is really good, establishing that balance. And that balance also, again, when we go back and we look at some of the run plays, they came after the pass game opened up the run. It's obvious right now this offensive line still isn't a unit that can just bully people around every single play. But when the defense can't sit on the run, when they kind of have to honor both and they're worried about it because your passing game is hitting a little bit, it makes the defense's job that much easier to actually it makes the offensive line's job that much easier to run block, to open up space, and to get Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren going. So all that to say, I think that the progress that we are seeing from the Steelers offense right now is taking some really good steps forward. And again, the balance of this game, there were 31 run plays and 31 runs and 28 pass attempts. That's the balance that you're looking for. Now, my biggest complaint for the Steelers offense right now is not about necessarily directly about play calling, but it is about the question we've been asking since last year. Does Kenny Pickett have the ability to audible at the line of scrimmage? Now, Matt Canada has long made it clear that he does not stop anyone from calling audibles, but it sure doesn't look that way. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. But it sure does not look that way when the Raiders, there were plays where just you see the whole defense creeping up and the Steelers just run right into it. It's a tackle for loss, and you're just like, how can you not just switch out of that and get to something else in your offense? And that can be very frustrating. And I think it definitely limited the Steelers after that last touchdown that they scored. And you look at this and you think that there's different possibilities of what could be going on there. The two ones that speak the loudest to me is the one that some people are assuming, and that's that Matt Canada is prideful and doesn't want his plays changed by anyone else. He wants to call the plays that win the game, and he believes that those are going to win. I think a more sensible take, though, isn't that. I think it's actually that they might be letting Kenny Pickett just kind of settle into what his role is and not ask too much of him at this time. Because, as we've seen, the Steelers are being very patient with their young guys. They're rolling them out. Joey Porter Jr. is a fine example of that. Broderick Jones, we still haven't seen get a start yet. I think Kenny Pickett's in a position where they are trying to let him get one thing at a time. It'd be a lot to throw on his plate to say, hey, also call these audibles, see these things, when he wasn't even executing the basic functions of the quarterback position that the Steelers absolutely needed for them to move forward as an offensive unit. So I think what may be happening there, as far as the non-audibling, it may just be a thing of like, hey, we love Kenny Pickett to call audibles and understand things, but he's not in that place right now where he can handle that, as he's trying to get this offense up to par of being a group that can consistently score, or at least consistently possess the football, move the football, do the things that are necessary to maintain the offense and keep the defense off the field. But again, even with that, this is still a better showing than it was week 1 and week 2. They continue to take steps forward, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to fix up. But the offense actually made progress in this game, and that was one of the major things you'll wanted to see on top of them getting a win if you're a Steelers fan. We got to talk defense because they were a huge part in this game. Even they might have even, you could say, won this game, even though I think it was a true team effort. We'll talk defense and a little bit of special teams because they also played a huge role, and that's why I said this is a team win for the Steelers. It's all parties involved got in there and pulled it out. We'll talk about that after the break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still got more to discuss. But first, I want to remind you this show is also sponsored by DoorDash. Missing the syrup for your pancakes or just ran out of your favorite coffee creamer? With DoorDash grocery delivery, you can get what you want right when you need it. You trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery deliveries that actually deliver too. Want even more value? You could save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. Get 50% off your first DoorDash by ordering up to $20 in value when you use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off and $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees for your first order. And when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store, enter code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget that's code LOCKEDONNFL for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's keep this show moving. Let's talk about the defense here. I want to say this before we dive further in. This is, right now, the Steelers do not have an elite defense. I mean, and it's kind of obvious to say, right? But this was supposed to be a defense that coming into this year that you were hoping that they would become elite. There is a path to get there. But it's possible they won't get to that this season. But they can still be an opportunistic defense, which they are right now, and they can still win this team a lot, and they can derail with the way that they're playing, the way that they're opportunistic. This can derail even some of the better NFL offenses out there. Now, in this game, they had 3 interceptions of Jimmy Garoppolo. That is now 7 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. And when you create turnovers at that rate, not that you'll always create turnovers at that rate, when you create turnovers at that rate, it covers up your deficiencies. And I got to shout out to Levi Wallace, who I have made no small effort to show where he's been struggling in these first 2 games. And even in the first quarter of this third game. But he stepped up big time in this game. He did give up a bad early touchdown, got caught looking in the backfield, lost inside leverage, and ended up getting beat for a deep touchdown, and did get cooked for another touchdown. But that's Davante Adams. He's Davante Adams. I think the Steelers' game plan coming into this game was, hey, you're not going to shut that guy down, but don't let anyone else beat you and force Jimmy Garoppolo to have to go to him all the time. And again, Levi Wallace stepped up huge, got 2 huge interceptions, one over the middle, one that was able to close the game out. And, I think that's something to show there. He also had 2 other really good breakups, one of which came on 4th down. So effectively, he handed the offense the ball 3 times, the last of which was to close things out. Levi Wallace wasn't very good, by a lot of stretches because of, he did have some struggles here, but he bounced back and he was a playmaker. And I think that's what the defense is looking for. Even if you can't be the ultimate coverage guy and you can't limit what they're doing every single play, you can't be a lockdown island player. If you can create turnovers and be part of that, that's huge. You also had Patrick Peterson with his first interception for the Steelers. Them taking advantage of things, that's why you wanted them there. But a reminder, this is all created because of the Steelers pass rush that was getting after it. 4 sacks in this game on a team that had not given up a sack all year. That's huge. TJ Watt gets 2 more, by the way. He now has 6 through 3 games. That's ridiculous. According to Jenna Hunter, our friend at Channel 11, she said this is now the first time in NFL history that someone has had 6 sacks in 3 games. I'd never seen that stat. I've never looked that stat up, but I trust Jenna Hunter because she's a heck of a reporter. That's why we have her on this show all the time. But TJ Watt, just another dominant game by him, getting 2 sacks and then all the pressures that he was getting that forced some errant throws, saved a touchdown once or twice. Those are the things that you want your edge rusher being able to do. But again, I'm going to go back, and look at this whole defense. Keanu Benton got a sack as well. Looked really good in doing so. Swam over his opponent. Showed some of those moves that we've been talking about. Marcus Golden got another sack. He's earning his paycheck as a backup edge rusher. And I know some of you are probably saying, Minka Fitzpatrick also got a sack and it just got thrown away because of a terrible call. I actually agree with y'all. I think that was a terrible call. I think the Steelers dealt with several terrible calls in this game. Well, the Raiders, not as much. But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is this defense produced. They created turnovers. They put the offense in a chance to win the game. And the offense bought them time at the end there. Kudos to Matt Canada on the 1 first down that they got in the final drive of the game. But then all that was left was about 12 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever. Steelers defense wasn't giving up those kind of yards and those kind of points. Just all in all, this was a game that on both sides of the ball, you could say, hey, there's a lot to clean up, but you'd rather be cleaning it up while you're 2-1 and leading your division. And again, I think this defense can come together and be a great unit. There's just plenty of work to do. The Steelers still aren't a dominant run-stuffing team, even though they held Jacobs to 62 yards per carry. Or no, that's 62 yards per carry. 62 total yards, 3.6 yards per carry. This still isn't a dominant run-stuffing team just yet, and I haven't seen them really cover consistently against a really talented quarterback who's just having an on day. But I also wonder how many of those types of games are they going to face this year? It's a good question. But in this test, the Steelers defense won out because they create turnovers. It's the bottom line. And that's what you want. That's part of what Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have talked about, is that they want to create turnovers. They want to cause havoc, because those are the teams that win, are the turnover creators and the ones that get aggressive. But again, I think what we're talking about for the defense here and how they need to get better, how they need to get sharper, we're saying the same thing for the offense. Both sides of the ball. You saw potential there, but then you also saw growth that's needed there. But it's good to know that now, when you're 2-1 and on top of the AFC North, instead of being 0-3 and still asking the same questions. Also, I'd be remiss if I did not give a shout out when we're talking about the game and things that went right for the Steelers and everything, if we didn't shout out special teams. Because Chris Boswell looks automatic right now. And Presley Harvin was booming that football. There was one bad punt that gave the Raiders good field position, but he was booming that football. And I was truly impressed by how he was performing out there. He averaged 53.8 yards per punt on the night. Had a 63-yarder. 3 of his 6 punts were inside the 20. Very impressive from Presley Harvin, especially considering Mike Tomlin straight up called him out. And he responded. Chris Boswell, 3 of 3 field goals, 2 of 2 on extra points. What else can you say? He's just Mr. Automatic. But again, rushing back out of special teams, defense and offense, there was some good, there was some bad, but there was more good. They balanced it together, and now they're 2-1. They're leading the AFC North. They're going on the road to play the Texans. And that's a group that they have to get ready and study for, because CJ Stroud is not a joke right now. But this is a defense that I think they can get after that offense and pressure a rookie to make mistakes. And this is an offense, I think, that can go out there and put up points and put pressure on that offense to match them and show your chemistry that far in. We got a long ways to go before Steelers-Texans. But Steelers fans, enjoy your victory Monday. Your Steelers earned it. And again, I think this is a true team win, because offense, defense, special teams all contributed big parts to this win. And the more you get those, the better your season will seem. We'll talk more about that as the week rolls on here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We'll have our Stars and Skulls grades available for the Tuesday show, so stay tuned for that. That'll be a fun one. And thanks again to everyone who tunes into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday, breaking things down on your Pittsburgh Steelers, covering your team every day. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.